My name is Vivian Hart, and I'm 37 years old. If you asked anyone in our circle what my marriage looked like, they would have used words like steady, safe, grown up. And for a long time, that was true. No fireworks, no chaos, no grand declarations. Just two people building a life the way I thought people were supposed to, brick by brick, budget by budget, year by year. I met Ethan Hart at a friend's wedding. He was charming in a quiet way, attentive, warm, the kind of man who held your gaze like you were the only person in the room, even when the room was full. We dated for 2 years. We got married in a ceremony that wasn't flashy and didn't need to be. Close family, close friends, soft music, and that calm feeling in my chest that I'd chosen the right kind of love. Practical love, loyal love, the kind that lasts. We'd been married 6 years. We lived in a nice suburb, tree-lined streets, decent schools in the district, even though we didn't have kids, neighbors who waved when they walked their dogs. We drove reliable cars. We took one vacation every year, sometimes Mexico, sometimes Colorado, sometimes a long weekend in Charleston if work got messy. I made decent money, software sales around $140K a year, depending on commission. Not billionaire money, not private jet money, but comfortable. And Ethan knew exactly what he was marrying. At least I thought he did. The crack started about 18 months ago. At first, it was subtle. Little comments that sounded harmless if you didn't look too closely. Have you ever thought about upgrading the kitchen? Do you think we should move somewhere with more prestige? Maybe we should start traveling, like really traveling. I'd laugh and kiss his cheek and say, one step at a time. And for a while, that worked. Then his old college roommate, Madeline Shaw, married a finance guy. A man who took her on 2-week trips to Italy like it was a casual weekend errand. First-class flights, private tours, photos dripping with luxury. Suddenly, Ethan wasn't just scrolling through pictures. He was measuring our life against them. And every time he measured, we came up short. We weren't enough. Not for him, anyway. 3 weeks ago, I came home from a brutal client meeting that left my jaw tight and my head buzzing like a power line. The kind of day where you replay every sentence you said and wonder if you pushed too hard or not hard enough, or if the deal was doomed the moment you walked into the building. All I wanted was quiet, a shower, food, maybe Ethan leaning into me on the couch asking, "You okay?" like he used to. Instead, I walked into our kitchen and found him sitting at the island, phone in hand, scrolling like his thumb was on autopilot. The lights above the island were on, bright and surgical, while the rest of the house was dim. He didn't even look up when I set my keys down. He just said casually, like he'd been waiting to drop it into the air, "We should go to the Maldives." I blinked once. "Hi to you too." Still no eye contact. Madeline just posted. They went for 10 days. Overwater bungalow, private pool. It looked insane. I loosened my blazer with fingers that suddenly felt clumsy. "That sounds nice." "It's more than nice," he said, finally glancing up. His eyes were bright in that way that used to mean excitement, but now it looked like hunger. "We should do that." I exhaled slowly. "Maybe next year. I've got that commission coming in December." And that's when he put his phone down. Not gently. Deliberately, like he was setting a chess piece on the board. "Next year," he repeated, and there was something sharp in his tone. "It's always next year with you, Viv." I stared at him, still standing in heels, still wearing the day's exhaustion like a second skin. "We literally just went to Mexico in March." His mouth twisted. "Mexico?" he said, with actual disgust, like the word tasted sour. "Madeline's husband took her to Italy for 2 weeks. First class. Private tours. He planned everything." I felt something in my chest tighten. Not anger yet, not even hurt. More like a warning bell, quiet but insistent. I set my bag down. "Ethan, I'm not a hedge fund manager." His eyes narrowed. "I know. And you knew that when you married me." The second I said it, I saw the change in his face. The warmth drained out like someone pulled a plug. His expression went cold, contemptuous, almost bored. "You know what?" he said softly. "You're right. I did know that." He leaned back on his stool, crossed his arms, and looked at me like I was an employee who'd failed a performance review. "And I'm tired," he continued, "of settling." The word hit harder than I expected. Settling. Like our marriage was a clearance rack. Like our life was something he was embarrassed to be seen holding. "Tired of settling for your mediocre income," he said, "and your mediocre ambitions." I stared at him, sure I'd misheard. Surely he didn't mean that. Surely the man I married wouldn't. He stood up, and then he said it. The sentence that turned my entire marriage into a before and after. "If you can't afford what I want," he sneered, "then stay out of my way. I'll find someone who can." For a moment, I couldn't move. It felt like ice water poured straight down my spine. I'd been exhausted when I walked in, but now I was wide awake. Every nerve lit up, every thought sharp. "Are you serious?" My voice came out quiet, which surprised me. He didn't soften. "Dead serious," he snapped. "I'm not spending the rest of my life pinching pennies while my friends live actual lives. Either step up or step aside. Either step up or step aside." I waited for the rush of panic, for the pleading, for the desperate urge to fix it. But instead, something inside me went still, like a switch flipped. The version of me that tried to keep peace. The version that explained, reassured, adjusted. She disappeared. I heard myself speak with a calm that didn't feel human. "Good luck with that." Ethan blinked. He actually blinked like he'd misheard me this time. "What?" he said. I met his stare. "Good luck finding someone who can afford your champagne taste." His mouth opened, then closed, like he expected me to promise overtime or grovel or cry. Instead, I turned away. I walked down the hall to my home office, heels clicking on hardwood like a countdown. I opened the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet, one I hadn't touched in years. Inside was a folder I'd labeled in neat black ink, just in case. I'd made it back when my aunt, Diane Hart, an attorney who'd seen too many marriages turn into lawsuits, told me, "Love makes people optimistic. Divorce makes them honest." I never wanted to need that folder, but I didn't hesitate. I pulled it out. I found the business card. I sat at my desk, still in my work clothes, and made a phone call with hands that did not shake. By the time Ethan crawled into bed that night, I was staring at the ceiling, feeling something I couldn't quite name. Not grief, not rage, more like clarity. The next morning, I brewed coffee like it was any other day. Ethan came into the kitchen rubbing his face, hair messy, eyes puffy, like he hadn't slept well. He gave me a cautious look, as if he expected me to be the one to apologize. I slid a mug toward him. Then I placed a business card on the counter. "My attorney," I said. He frowned. "What is that?" "We're done," I told him. His face went through confusion first, then shock, then the kind of rage that makes someone's skin look tight. "You're divorcing me over one argument?" he barked. I didn't raise my voice. "No," I said evenly. "I'm divorcing you because you just told me I'm not enough, and you're going to find someone richer. That's not an argument, Ethan. That's a choice." His jaw clenched. I was upset. I didn't mean it. "You told me to step aside," I said. "So I am. Permanently." "You can't just "I can," I cut in, and that was the first time he flinched. "Papers are being filed today. Move out or don't, but we're done." I grabbed my keys. He followed me to the door, voice rising, trying to pull me back into the old dance. Guilt, blame, panic, bargaining. But I didn't dance. I walked out. My phone started buzzing before I even hit the end of the driveway. Text after text after text. Ethan's name lighting up the screen like a warning sign. I didn't open a single one, because here's what he didn't know yet, and what he was about to learn the hard way. I don't make decisions without protection. And 6 years ago, when we were in love and smiling for wedding photos, he signed something he barely read, something that was about to turn his threat into a lesson, and mine into freedom. I didn't answer Ethan's texts, not because I was trying to punish him, but because I knew myself. If I opened even one message, I'd be dragged into the same spiral women like me always get dragged into. The explaining, the defending, the apologizing for being too sensitive, the little compromises that turn into permanent surrender. So I did what my Aunt Diane taught me years ago. I treated this like a legal matter, not an emotional negotiation. By lunchtime, Ethan had left me 3 voicemails. The first was angry. The second was shaky. The third was soft in a way that would have broken me if it hadn't come 12 hours too late. "Viv," he said, voice low, like he was trying to sound like the man I married. "This is insane. Call me back, please." I deleted all 3. When I pulled into my office parking lot, my hands finally trembled. Just once. Just a brief flutter on the steering wheel. Not fear. Not regret. It was the nervous system realizing the story had changed. That the life I'd rehearsed in my head, kids maybe, bigger house someday, retirement near the water, had cracked open like glass. And the person who did it wasn't a stranger. It was my husband. I spent the day moving through meetings like a ghost, smiling at coworkers, answering emails, pitching updates to clients. But inside, I was replaying that sentence in his voice. "If you can't afford what I want, stay out of my way. I'll find someone who can." At 4:12 p.m., my assistant buzzed my office. "Vivian, there's a woman online too. She says she's Ethan's mom." Of course she was. I stared at the phone for a long second. Then I said, "Send it to voicemail." "Okay," my assistant replied carefully, like she understood this wasn't a normal call. 5 minutes later, the voicemail notification blinked. I didn't listen yet. I didn't have to. I could already hear the soundtrack. Marriage takes work. You're giving up. You're being dramatic. He loves you. You're ruining his life. I stayed late. Not because I wanted to impress anyone, but because my house no longer felt like mine. When I finally drove home, the sky was already dark, and my neighborhood looked too calm for what was happening inside me. Porch lights glowing, curtains drawn, someone's TV flickering behind a window. Normal lives, normal evenings. Meanwhile, mine was a legal process with a pulse. Ethan's car was in the driveway when I pulled in. I paused, not in panic, in calculation. Then I walked inside. He was in the kitchen, the same island, the same stool, the same posture, like he was trying to recreate the scene. But this time, he looked like a man who'd been punched in the ribs. His eyes were bloodshot. He stood quickly. "Viv." I held up one hand. "Don't," I said quietly. He froze. I walked past him to the hallway, took off my coat, hung my keys on the hook like I was making a point. I could still exist here without collapsing. Then I turned back to him. "You can say whatever you want," I told him. "But not to me." His mouth tightened. "So you're serious? You're actually doing this?" "I'm doing exactly what you told me to do," I said. "I'm stepping aside." "That's not what I meant," he snapped, frustration cutting through the exhaustion. I tilted my head. "Then what did you mean, Ethan?" He opened his mouth, closed it. The silence answered for him. He swallowed hard. I was angry. I was stressed. "Madeline." "Oh," I said softly, like a blade sliding out of a sheath. "So it's Madeline now." He flinched. I took a breath. "I'm not doing this in circles. My attorney will contact yours. That's it." Ethan's eyes widened. "Attorney? Why are you acting like I'm some criminal?" "Because you threatened to replace me," I said, like I was a job you could quit if the salary wasn't high enough. He ran a hand through his hair. "I didn't say replace you." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I repeated the words back to him. Exact. "I'll find someone who can." His jaw tightened, and I saw it. The reflex that used to charm me now twisting into defensiveness. "That's not—" "I'm done listening," I cut in. "Not because I don't have feelings, because I do. But feelings don't protect me from someone who sees me as a stepping stone." Ethan stared at me, like he didn't recognize the woman standing in front of him. And maybe he didn't, because the Vivian who loved him would have cried. The Vivian who trusted him would have begged. This Vivian had a folder in a filing cabinet labeled "just in case." He shook his head. 6 years, he muttered. "You're throwing away 6 years because I said one stupid thing." "It wasn't one thing," I said. "It was 18 months of comparisons, contempt, and you treating our life like it embarrasses you." He stepped toward me, hands out like he was trying to calm an animal. "Viv, please, we can fix this." I looked at his hands, then I looked at his face, and I realized something that made my stomach go cold. He wasn't scared of losing me. Not really. He was scared of losing access to what I represented. Stability. A home. A life that held him without asking too much. That thought didn't hurt. It clarified. I turned away. "I'm going upstairs." "Wait," he called. "We need to talk." "No," I said. "We don't." Upstairs, I closed the bedroom door and leaned against it for a second, eyes shut. And that was when the voicemail finally played in my head without me pressing anything. So I opened my phone. I listened. Ethan's mom's voice hit my ear like a sermon. "Vivian, this is Marlene. I don't know what's gotten into you, but marriage is hard work. You can't just run when things get difficult. Ethan loves you. He's upset. Everyone says things they don't mean. You're being stubborn and prideful, and you're going to regret this." I ended it halfway through. "Block the number." Then I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall until my eyes burned. Not crying. Just staring. Because even now, even after he'd said what he said, they were trying to make me the problem. The next morning, my attorney called. "Diane." My aunt didn't do soft. She didn't do comforting phrases. She did facts. "Okay," she said. "He'll need his own counsel. I'm drafting the filing today. But Vivian, prepare yourself. Once he realizes what's protected, he's going to panic." I swallowed. "What do you mean?" "I mean, he thinks divorce is a negotiation," she replied, "and he thinks he's entitled to half your life." That word again. Entitled. I stared out the window at the neighborhood. Quiet, innocent, completely unaware. "Do you think he'll fight?" I asked. Diane exhaled. "He already is. That voicemail from his mother? That's the opening move. We're going to keep everything clean." Clean. That was the word she used. But I already knew something. People like Ethan didn't stay clean when they weren't getting what they wanted. 2 days later, Diane emailed me the final draft of the disclosure. She included numbers, and reading them felt like watching my life turned into a spreadsheet. Before I met Ethan, my grandmother passed and left me a decent inheritance, about $280,000. I didn't blow it. I didn't shop it away. I invested it. Index funds, slow growth, boring growth. The kind of growth no one brags about on Instagram. By the time Ethan and I got married, it had grown to around $420,000. And because Diane is who she is, she insisted it stayed separate. Not because she didn't like Ethan, because she's seen love turn into lawsuits. Then there was my startup equity. I'd been at a small software company since before I met him. I had a tiny percentage, nothing dramatic at the time, but the company grew, and my equity grew with it. Both of those things were protected by one document Ethan signed while he was smiling and excited about cake tastings and seating charts. The prenup. What wasn't protected? The house equity we built after marriage. The savings we built after marriage. My retirement contributions during marriage. That part would be divided. And honestly, I was fine with that. We built those things together, even if he didn't appreciate them. The mediator scheduled our meeting for 2 weeks out. Ethan hired an attorney, some guy he found online, the kind who advertised aggressive representation, like divorce was a cage match. Ethan's text changed tone again, angry to sweet, threatening to apologetic. He tried every version of himself, cycling through them like outfits. Can we please talk? I didn't mean it. You're my wife. This is insane. I answered once. One sentence. All communication through attorneys. After that, he went silent, which should have been a relief. But silence from someone like Ethan didn't mean peace. It meant planning. The day of mediation, I walked into the office with Diane beside me, her posture straight, her expression unreadable. Ethan was already there. He looked like he'd tried to make himself look composed. Pressed shirt, neat hair, jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle jump. His eyes found mine, and for half a second I saw something that almost looked like regret. Then his attorney spoke, and the mask snapped into place. My client is seeking a 50-50 division of all marital assets, his lawyer announced, voice sharp with confidence, including investment accounts, retirement funds, and home equity. We are also requesting spousal support of $3,000 monthly for 3 years while he transitions back into full-time work. Diane didn't blink. She slid a document across the table. Prenuptial agreement, she said calmly, signed 6 years ago. Ethan frowned, confusion flashing across his face like someone had just changed the rules mid-game. What does that have to do with anything, he asked. His attorney picked it up, started reading. His expression didn't change at first. Then his eyes slowed. He read a line again, then again, and I watched the exact moment his confidence cracked. Ethan leaned forward. What? His attorney looked at him. Actually looked at him, the way a doctor looks at a patient before delivering bad news. You signed this? His attorney asked. Ethan scoffed. Yeah, before the wedding. It's just standard stuff. Did you read it? Diane asked, voice polite but edged. Ethan shrugged. I skimmed it. The mediator cleared his throat. Is there an issue with the validity of the agreement? Ethan's attorney swallowed. No, he admitted. It appears specific, very solid. Ethan blinked. Okay, but we still split everything, right? Diane's voice didn't rise, but it sharpened. No, she said. Your spouse's inheritance and premarital business equity are completely protected. They are not subject to division. The room went quiet. I could hear the air conditioner hum. Ethan stared at Diane like she'd insulted him. That's not, he started. His attorney kept reading, then paused on a disclosure page. The protected assets, he said slowly, are currently valued at... He looked up at me, like he needed to confirm I was real. You said your total net worth was around $800,000, he asked. I nodded once. Diane leaned in. Protected assets are approximately $520,000. Ethan's face drained. Not white, not pale. Drained, like someone pulled the color out of him. That's, he whispered, that's more than half. Yes, Diane said. Marital assets to be divided are roughly $260,000. Your share would be approximately $130,000, plus a portion of retirement contributions during marriage. We're offering a one-time spousal support payment of $18,000. Ethan's head snapped up. Offering? He barked. Like I'm a beggar? His attorney didn't even look at him now. He was still reading the prenup like it might magically change. This is actually generous, he muttered under his breath. Ethan exploded. Generous, he shouted, standing halfway out of his chair. That's barely anything. The investments grew while we were married. Diane's eyes didn't soften. They were separate before marriage, she said, and remained separate by agreement. I don't care what I signed, Ethan snapped. I deserve half. I'm her husband. Diane's voice turned clinical. You were her husband, she corrected, and you signed a legal document you didn't read. Ethan's attorney grabbed his arm. We need to talk outside. They left the room, and as the door shut behind them, the mediator gave me a careful look, like he wasn't sure if I was okay. I was, not because it didn't hurt, but because the story was finally honest. Ethan didn't want to fix our marriage. He wanted to win a payout, and now he'd learned the truth. There was no jackpot waiting for him, only consequences. When they came back in 15 minutes, Ethan's eyes were swollen. His attorney looked defeated. We reject the offer, his attorney said tightly. We'll fight this in court. Diane didn't blink. That's your right, she said. See you in court. We stood, and as I walked out, Ethan called my name, quiet, broken, almost human. Viv. I stopped just long enough to look at him, not with anger, with something colder. Recognition. You told me to step aside, I said softly, so stop acting surprised that I did. And I walked away. But even as the elevator doors closed, Diane's voice echoed in my head. Once someone like Ethan realizes they can't take what they want, they don't get humble. They get ugly. Diane was right. Ethan didn't get humble. He got mean. It started quietly, small enough that if I hadn't already been braced, I might have missed it. The first thing he did was try to take money. 2 days after mediation, Diane called me before I'd even poured my morning coffee. Did you move your direct deposit? She asked. Yes, I said, the day after I filed. Good, she replied, because Ethan tried to drain the joint checking account last night. I closed my eyes. I'd moved my paycheck and half the remaining balance into a new account, leaving exactly his half, plus a little extra, because I was still trying to be fair. He took everything anyway. Then he claimed I'd stolen marital funds. Diane sounded almost bored when she told me how it ended. His attorney made him return it this morning, she said. Paper trail was clean. He didn't think this through. No, he didn't. But thinking wasn't his goal. Control was. The next move was louder. My phone rang at work, and this time it wasn't him. It was my boss. Viv, she said gently, I wanted to give you a heads up before HR does. My stomach dropped. About what? Your husband has called 3 times today, she continued. He claims you're unstable, that you're making threats, that you're not safe to be around. For a split second, I couldn't speak. I felt heat rush up my neck, rage, humiliation, disbelief colliding all at once. Then my boss sighed. I know you. HR knows you. We documented everything and told him to stop contacting the company immediately, or we'll pursue harassment charges. I just wanted you to hear it from me. I swallowed. I'm so sorry. Don't be, she said firmly. You've been exemplary for 8 years. This is on him. I thanked her, hung up, and sat there staring at my screen. So this was the new narrative. If he couldn't get my money, he'd try to get my reputation. That night, Diane called again. He's escalating, she said. And Vivian, this next part is ugly. I exhaled slowly. Tell me. They filed a motion to invalidate the prenup. My jaw tightened. On what grounds? Duress, she replied, and lack of independent counsel. I almost laughed. Almost. Because the audacity was staggering. He chose his own lawyer, I said. We have emails. I know, Diane said, and that's why this won't stick. There was a pause. Then she added, but they also added something else. My chest went cold. What? They're claiming emotional abuse, she said carefully. Controlling behavior. That you pressured him throughout the marriage, and that the prenup was signed under emotional distress. For a moment, I couldn't hear anything else she said. The room tilted. Not because I believed it, but because I knew what those words did. Abuse. Control. Those aren't just legal terms. They stain. They're lying, I said flatly. Yes, Diane agreed, completely. And they have no evidence, but we still have to respond. How? I asked. By proving a negative, she said. By showing you weren't abusive. That night, I opened boxes I didn't know I'd need. Years of texts, emails, photos, calendar invites, vacation confirmations, normal arguments, normal apologies, normal affection. I had to prove that I wasn't a monster. I printed emails where I encouraged his interests, texts where I asked how his day was, messages where I checked in, supported him, loved him. It felt grotesque, like my marriage had been put on trial not for what it was, but for what he needed it to be so he could win. The hearing was scheduled quickly. Too quickly. We sat in front of a judge who looked tired, like he'd seen this exact story 100 times before. Ethan's attorney went first. My controlling behavior, he said, had created an environment where Ethan felt pressured and emotionally unsafe. Ethan testified. He talked about feeling less than, about how my financial success made him feel small, about how he felt he couldn't say no. He never looked at me. Not once. When it was Diane's turn, she didn't raise her voice. She raised documents, emails where Ethan asked for a lawyer recommendation, invoices showing he paid for 3 hours of prenup review, a signed acknowledgement stating he reviewed the prenup with independent counsel, and finally, the attorney himself, appearing via Zoom. He confirmed everything. I explained the terms in detail, the lawyer said. Mr. Hart said he understood. He told me, quote, "It's fine. I'm just excited to get married." The judge leaned back. 10 minutes later, he spoke. "Motion denied," he said. "The prenuptial agreement is valid. If there are no other legitimate disputes, I suggest both parties settle this quickly." Ethan broke. He cried, loud, performative sobs that echoed in the room. His attorney stared at the table. Outside the courtroom, Ethan finally came at me. "You planned this," he said, voice shaking. "You trapped me." I looked at him, really looked. The man who once told me I wasn't enough. The man who tried to brand me abusive because I wouldn't bankroll his fantasy. "No," I said quietly. "You just didn't read what you signed." "I trusted you," he shot back. "And I trusted you not to tell me to step aside so you could find someone richer," I replied. "Guess we both misjudged." His mother stepped forward then, eyes blazing. "You're going to regret this," she hissed. "He could have had anyone. He chose you." I almost laughed. Instead, I said calmly, "He literally told me I wasn't enough. I'm just agreeing with him." Diane stepped between us. "That's enough. Any further contact outside legal proceedings will be considered harassment." We walked away. I could hear Ethan sobbing in the parking lot. For a second, a tiny, stupid second, I felt something like pity. Then I remembered his face in the kitchen, that look of contempt, and the pity evaporated. I thought it was over. I was wrong. Because while going through our finances, preparing for the next round, I found something else. Something he'd forgotten. Something that turned his moral outrage into a joke. A credit card statement. In my name. With his spending all over it. And suddenly, the story wasn't about what he didn't get anymore. It was about what he had taken. I found the credit card by accident. That's the part that still makes me shake my head. I wasn't digging for dirt. I wasn't playing detective. I was doing what divorce forces you to do. Pulling every statement, every account, every loose financial thread into one brutal, fluorescent light spreadsheet. Line by line, month by month. And then there it was. A card I hadn't thought about in years. My name on it. My account. His spending. I stared at the total first. 15,000. Maxed. My stomach dropped, but not in the way I expected. Not shock. Not panic. Recognition. Because suddenly, a lot of things clicked into place. The constant complaints about tight finances. The way he scoffed at Mexico but somehow always had money for dinners out. The spa weekends he called networking. The designer bags I vaguely remembered appearing in our closet that I'd assumed were gifts from friends. I pulled the statements one by one. $800 handbag. $420 dinner. $1,200 spa weekend. $650 shoes. Another $500 dinner. Another bag. Another brunch. Another indulgence. 8 months. 8 months of him telling me we couldn't afford a better life. 8 months of him quietly living one anyway, on my credit. I sat back in my chair and laughed once. Just once. Not because it was funny. Because it was so perfectly on brand. He didn't want a partner. He wanted a sponsor. I sent everything to Diane. Her reply came 10 minutes later. "Well," she wrote, "this just got interesting." When she called, her voice was calm, but there was an edge of satisfaction under it. "This is marital debt," she said. "Technically, but since it's on your card, you're liable." I felt the familiar frustration flare. "So I'm stuck paying for his shopping spree?" "Not necessarily," she replied. "We can argue allocation. He made the charges. He hid them. That matters." I leaned forward. "You can do that?" "We can absolutely try," she said. "If the judge agrees, half of that debt gets deducted from his settlement." Half. 700. I pictured Ethan's face when he realized the number next to his name was getting smaller again. "Do it," I said without hesitation. His attorney lost his mind. The email Diane forwarded to me was dripping with outrage. "This is petty. This is vindictive. This is nickel and diming." Diane's response was a masterpiece of restraint. "Your client accrued $15,000 in undisclosed discretionary spending while claiming financial hardship. Should my client bear that burden alone?" No insults. No emotion. Just facts. The hearing was scheduled. And that's when Ethan started showing up. At first, I thought it was coincidence. The grocery store near my apartment. The coffee shop across from my office. Places he'd never frequented before. Always just there. One morning, I was waiting for my latte when I felt it. That sensation you get when someone is standing too close behind you. I turned. "Ethan." Same pressed shirt, same careful expression, same eyes that used to soften me and now just felt invasive. Viv, he said quietly, can we talk? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't create a scene. No, I said. All communication goes through attorneys. He scoffed. You're being ridiculous. We were married for 6 years, he continued, voice tight. You can't even talk to me like a human being? I met his eyes. You told me to step aside so you could find someone richer. I stepped aside. There's nothing left to discuss. I didn't mean it, he insisted louder now. You know I didn't. Yes, you did, I said. You just didn't expect consequences. People were starting to look. His jaw clenched. You're punishing me over one comment. No, I said calmly. I'm divorcing you because of your contempt, your entitlement, and your belief that I exist to upgrade your lifestyle. He reached out, grabbed my arm. Not hard, but not okay. I pulled away instantly. Do not touch me, I said, voice sharp now. Please, he whispered, panic bleeding through. I'm sorry, we can start over. I shook my head. No. Something in him snapped. You're a bastard, he shouted, loud enough for half the cafe to hear. Then he stormed out. The barista slid my coffee across the counter with wide eyes. That was rough, he said. Tell me about it, I replied. The hearing itself was almost anticlimactic. His attorney tried to frame the spending as normal marital expenses. Diane didn't even let him finish. She laid the statements out like evidence in a crime show. Normal marital expenses do not include $800 handbags and $1,200 spa weekends, she said evenly, especially when incurred secretly. The judge reviewed the documents slowly. Then he looked at me. Were you aware of these purchases? He asked. No, Your Honor, I replied. I added him as an authorized user years ago for emergencies. The minimum payments were automated, and I didn't notice until we began disclosure. And you're requesting that he assume responsibility for half the debt? Yes, I said. He made the charges. The judge turned to Ethan's attorney. Does your client dispute making these purchases? There was a pause. No, the attorney admitted. The judge nodded. Then half the debt, $7,500, will be deducted from his settlement. Ethan stood up so fast his chair screeched. This is theft, he yelled. She's stealing from me. Sit down, the judge said calmly, or I will hold you in contempt. Ethan sat, but he didn't stop glaring. The final numbers were updated. What he thought was his escape fund had officially shrunk again. And this time it wasn't because of a document he hadn't read. It was because of choices he'd made. Secretly. Selfishly. And that's when I knew. He wasn't fighting for fairness. He was fighting to avoid accountability. And the end was finally close. The final hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. No drama in the calendar invite. No sense of ceremony. Just a line item on a court docket that would officially end a marriage I already felt like I'd buried months ago. I arrived early. Not because I was nervous, but because I didn't want to rush this. I wanted to walk in calm, grounded, finished. Ethan arrived 10 minutes late. He looked smaller. Not physically, but energetically. Like someone who'd been arguing with reality for so long, it finally won. His attorney whispered to him. He nodded too fast. When the judge took the bench, everything moved quickly. Too quickly, almost. As if the court had already decided this story didn't need a sequel. Asset division confirmed. Debt allocation confirmed. Prenup upheld. Then Ethan stood. One last attempt. Your Honor, he said, voice shaking. This isn't fair. The judge looked at him over his glasses. On what grounds? I gave up my career for this marriage, Ethan said. I supported her. I sacrificed. I felt my shoulders tense. Not because I was afraid, because I knew this lie was his final card. The judge flipped through the file. According to the record, he said slowly, you worked part-time retail both before and during the marriage. Ethan swallowed. I could have pursued more if she'd supported me. The judge closed the file. That's not evidence, you saw that, he said. That's speculation. He paused. The prenuptial agreement is valid. The settlement is equitable. Divorce is granted. The gavel came down. And just like that, 6 years ended in under 30 seconds. Ethan made a sound that wasn't quite a sob, not quite a shout. His mother, who had positioned herself 3 rows back, stood up like she was ready to charge. Diane stepped in front of me immediately. Don't even think about it, she warned quietly. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The house sold within a month. We split the proceeds exactly as outlined. I took my share and didn't look for something bigger. I looked for something lighter. That's how I ended up in the apartment downtown. Half the space, twice the piece. Everything within walking distance. No yard to maintain. No echoes of arguments bouncing off the walls. I kept the furniture I loved. Donated the rest. It felt symbolic. Keeping what fit, releasing what didn't. Financially, it hurt. When you add up the house, the settlement, and the legal fees, I lost around $130,000. But I kept my inheritance. I kept my equity. I kept my future intact. And most importantly, I kept myself. 3 months later, I was at a restaurant with a coworker when I saw Ethan's sister across the room. She was with friends. She saw me, then pretended not to. I didn't mind. As we were leaving, one of the women at her table caught up to me near the door. "Hey," she said awkwardly, "you're Vivian, right?" "Yes." She hesitated, then leaned in. "Good for you." I blinked. "Excuse me?" She lowered her voice. "He was always entitled. Nightmare level. His sister's the same." She smiled quickly, embarrassed, then walked back to her table. I stood there for a moment longer than necessary, not because I needed validation, but because it felt like the universe exhaling. I heard through mutual friends that Ethan moved back in with his mother, that he was now working full-time at the boutique he used to mock, that he was dating someone new, someone he claimed had money. Good luck to her. She'll need it. A few weeks later, a text came through from an unknown number. "You ruined his life. He's struggling because of you." I stared at it for a moment. Then I replied once. He told me to step aside so he could find someone richer. I stepped aside. Blocked. I don't regret the divorce. Not even a little. Yes, it was expensive. Yes, it was exhausting. But I am not spending the rest of my life with someone who sees me as a disappointment because I'm not a millionaire. The prenup wasn't about revenge. It was about protection, about honoring what I built before someone decided I was just a stepping stone to something shinier. Would I marry again? Maybe. But next time I won't ignore the signs. The comparisons, the dissatisfaction, the entitlement disguised as ambition. Those don't fade. They grow. And if there's one thing I know now, it's this. If your partner tells you you're not enough, believe them. Don't audition. Don't beg. Don't try to become someone else to earn love. Step aside and walk forward. And always, always get a prenup. Because the person who loves you today might be the one sneering at you tomorrow for not being rich enough.